I don't think why do you write? How did you become an author? How did you decide to become an author? These are questions I often get, and I don't think I've really on my social media have really taken the time to tell you guys my story, my journey a little bit so far. I still have a long way to go in my journey, because eventually I want a Netflix series or something, or a movie, or an anime show, anything, right? That's still on my bucket list as an author. But regardless, at the Lake County Oddities Market, someone asked me this question, and I realized unless you've read those beginning forewords out of the Writer's Bane collection, the research and formatting book, I haven't really intimately exposed that story, right? First off, how did I come about writing? I've always written. You hear this often from everyone. Oh, I've been writing since elementary school. And that's been pretty true for me. First off, I was tongue-tied. I could not speak until I had to relearn, get my tongue clipped in, I think it was first grade. And then was still taking a lot of speech therapy in school all through second and third and fourth grade. So if I enunciate things a little weird, it's still there a little bit. But in fifth grade, I think is when I realized I enjoy writing long stories, not short stories, not flash fiction. I'm talking about a composition book full of writing and written. Crazy fifth grade Val, right? I stickered it up because, as one does. Because, in the 90s, there was all these stories about girls and kids getting lost in Africa. So this is my story of a girl getting lost in Africa. And it's absolutely crazy to think that I had done that, right? So that would be where my love for writing a novel started, right? Middle school, I had an amazing 7th grade, Miss Clifton, 7th grade English teacher who was absolutely encouraging, and I appreciate her, and I hope she knows that I do remember what she did for me. She inspired me to keep writing my crazy fantasy stories and wild stories, and she also submitted several poems and poetry and pieces to anthologies that got in. I don't have copies of those, but it's pretty awesome that she showed me that there is capability there. And so come fast forward to high school, a lot of my notes, and it was the teachers finally just gave up trying to catch us with the notes. So back in the day, you used to hide notes up under the desk, especially if you knew your friend had the period after you or shortly after you. And me and my friend Rebecca would take turns writing, right? And I would write, and then she would pick up right where I left off, and we would hide notes or exchange them at certain turning points, right? And then we had a folder that we kept all of them in. I don't have this folder. I think she might still have the folder, but I had several folders like this through high school that I kept, and that got passed around, which was the crazy thing. And I did not understand the impact of this until my 20-year high school reunion, and I will tell you guys about that in a second. But a lot of people might recognize this book, and it's hard to read, but it says Sakujin, RD Rough Draft, Valerie Cook, right? And this was a folder where I was actively handwriting and then would eventually type up sections of my story, right? And it's crazy because I would be like, okay, I'm cutting this scene out, and it's just, yes, I still have it. But there was more than one of these, because as I updated it, I would update other folders, and those folders would get hidden in different places in different people's lockers at the end of the day, because I could not bring these home. because my mom had decided that the best punishment for me when she was angry with me was trashing these, destroying them. At one point, I think she set one on fire. Whether she remembers this, I don't know, but I clearly remember this. And those last couple years, I did not realize my desperation until my reunion. And I had everyone telling me that some of them still had the folder or had the folder for a long time. And that they were so excited that despite it all, that I am doing exactly what they remembered me doing. So thank you, friends and colleagues, my teachers. They're the reason why I didn't totally give up. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't go a long time after high school and in college that I stopped writing for a long time. At one point, I was living out of my truck and kind of bouncing around and things like that because I didn't want to go home. My parents had divorced at that point. I didn't want to be with either of them. So it was very hard on me. But I finally ran into someone, I don't even remember who it was, 5 years after high school. And they asked how that story with Houghton was. And I'm like, you remember my character's name? They're like, yeah, I think you left off here. And I'm like, no, that's exactly where I left off. And it got me thinking that maybe I should at least finish that story, right? And so hence I started working on it again. I started doing research for book 2, and that's what this is. This is me printing out and editing, revising by hand because I was still learning. I had joined an amazing, the Alliance of World Builders on autonomy. And I mean, there's even, you know, the early variation of the cover design that I used to post on autonomy, and that's what it used to look like, right? And I got so much advice, and I realized I've been writing as a hobby, not as an author, and I have to restructure how I see writing in general and break some bad habits, create new habits, be aware of what to do and not to do. What's the difference between hobby writing and author and commercial? It was a lot, and I got overwhelmed, right? So that's when I went back to my other stories, and I was like, you know what? I was going to make this a graphic novel, but I'll just take what I've learned about professional writing and apply it to telling Cedric's story. And that's where you get this. I don't know how many of you still have the OGs, and then I decided to explore what self-publishing is like. After querying this, they were like, hey, you're mixing so many genres, this is a marketing nightmare, but it's well written, it's a good story, so here's some advice on self-publishing. And thank you for all those lit agents who were willing to pass that information on during a time where self-publishing still had a huge no stigma. Now today it has more, we've gone a little bit back to that original feel, but it's won a award, it's doing well. It can, some bookstores carry it on their bookshelf. It's pretty wild. But that doesn't mean I didn't go back and finish Sakujin, which is now called Rebirth. It's called the Tattooed Angels trilogy, and yes, I finished my intent of the 3 books. And this is an ode to my beginning, my start, my struggles, that I finished this trilogy. So you can also find that. But you're probably wondering, well, what happened? Or like, when did that switch of I'm just writing for fun to author? Well, in 2009, I was laid off. I was feeling sick, only to find out I was actually pregnant. And then the mole on my leg got huge, and I was diagnosed with stage 3 skin cancer while pregnant with my first kid and having the foreclose on my house. It was a lot. And the only regret, for some strange reason, that I had was not finishing that book from high school. So that's where the switch happened. That's where this is where I need to be. And that's what got me started to sign up on autonomy and start learning and doing the difference. That's how Cedric was born, all because of that moment at my lowest point. And hopefully I don't cry. Come on, keep it together, Val. I was terrified. They had to take the back of my left calf. I was pushing into my 3rd trimester. They were going to have to test the placenta. Just so you know, me and the baby are fine. He is 15 and now ornery and talks back, but, and I've had no reoccurrence, but it was frightening because I've never had a stitch in my life or anything. And it was a lot. And, but as my great grandma always said, life will always take you where you need to go, not where you want to go. And I feel like if it wasn't for that moment, and it probably needed a moment like that, unfortunately, I probably wouldn't have pushed so hard into writing and using those skills I learned in college for graphic design to create books. I remember going, trying to pitch this book to indie magazines and stuff, and they're like, no, like, how much did you pay for your typeset and your cover? And I said, no, I did them. Like, your rules say I have to do them all. And they're like, no, really, like, who? And I'm like, wow, like, I did such a great job that they're like, no, they don't believe me. Which was both devastating and a huge compliment at the same time. But that is how Val decided to be an author, guys. There was a lot of emotional distress. And writing was an escape, a stress reliever, and I am thankful that you guys enjoy my stories as much as I adore them. And hopefully I can keep this going.